From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up today on AgDay, the fight against a deadly form of cancer just got a little easier thanks to new technology.
He told me that that the cyst was there and that it was precancerous.
Not snow, but another problem facing folks in one part of rural America. And markets continue their rally as we get new information about the trade deal with China.
All in all, a great rally, great opportunity in soybeans.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado and the all-new Silverado HD, the strongest, most advanced family of Silverados ever.
Good morning, I'm Betsy Gibbon. Clinton is on vacation. We now know when that Phase 1 trade deal with China will be signed. President Trump announcing on Twitter he'll sign the first phase of a trade deal with China at the White House on Wednesday, January 15th. The president also saying he'll then travel to Beijing at a later date for talks aimed at reaching agreement on outstanding sticking points in the U.S. China trade relationship. Traders on the CME floor in Chicago weigh in.
We are approaching 8-month highs, 9-month highs, a great opportunity for farmers and producers. And if you look ahead to 2020, new crop soybeans, they are over $1.10 off of the contract lows we suffered through back in May, also approaching multi-month highs.
As part of the deal reached last month, the U.S. agreed to cut some tariffs on China, while the Chinese agreed to buy large quantities of U.S. farm products such as soybeans. But the agreement is smaller than the comprehensive deal President Trump had hoped for. It leaves many of the thorniest issues for future talks. The country also announcing it will accept imports of 2 new genetically modified crops for import. The Agriculture Ministry says the approval for the imports also comes with renewed permits for 10 others. The 2 new crops were a soybean and a papaya variety. The renewed permission for imports of 10 other GM products include corn, soybean, and canola varieties. The approvals will last for 3 years. And while negotiations on the Phase 1 trade deal with China wrap up, the U.S. is setting its sights on trade talks with other countries. White House advisor Peter Navarro telling CNBC, quote, "Next year we're going to try to get something going with Great Britain, Vietnam, Europe, and anybody else who wants to fairly trade with the United States," end quote. U.S. trade officials have signaled the upcoming new trade agreement will be especially good news for U.S. rice producers who did not get market access gains in the U.S.-Japan trade agreement that is currently being implemented. It's believed bird flu is responsible for the deaths of at least 25,000 turkeys and poultry farms in eastern Poland. It happened near the country's borders with Ukraine and Belarus. Polish veterinary authorities were planning to kill tens of thousands of birds in a major poultry farming region. Police were blocking access to the affected areas. A vet confirmed the deadly H5N8 virus is responsible for the turkey deaths in 2 farms. The farm ledger at the end of 2019 will show a rise in net farm income from 2018 for some producers. U.S.D.A. economists say overall income grew by $8.5 billion to a total of $92.5 billion, or about a 10% increase. But agriculture economist Robert Johansson says that may be a little misleading. Actual cash taken in by farmers from sales fell below 2018 numbers by over $4.5 billion, or 1.2%. Farmers did get some help from a 1% drop in production costs, but what put farm income over the 2018 level was the extra help from the government, such as trade aid.
The market facilitation program added to roughly about $10 billion to 2019 income. And then we also had the wildfire, hurricane, and indemnity program, WHIP.
Inputs haven't come down a whole lot. You look at their crop budgets, the profit margins are extremely lean, even if they exist at all. There are people in the Southeast that are able to take advantage of some of the opportunities there with the shipping fair, with the Mississippi River, and maybe get a little positive basis that helps us sometimes. But in the deep Southeast, when you start looking at the corn and peanut, the cotton and peanut grower, the profit margins are very thin.
There were also much higher crop insurance payments. If you take all of that, you end up with a decline in farm income of about 6%. Snow and ice have closed several roads around the country lately, but this closure was a bit more unusual. A Washington State highway was closed in both directions on New Year's Eve after several cars became trapped in tumbleweeds. Just look at that. One trooper saying cars were trapped in a pile of tumbleweeds that stood up 15 feet tall. The State Department of Transportation using snow plows to clear the scene. The trooper said it took about 10 hours to clear the road. No one was injured, but he says people were stuck in their cars at midnight and rung in the new year, trapped under the weeds. The first winter storm of the year is bringing snow and rain to portions of the country. Let's get an update from meteorologist Mike Hoffman.
Thanks, Betsy. Yeah, as we head into the weekend, we're going to see two storm systems, one in the east, although most of the snow is going to be in the Great Lakes on that one. And then you can see the second one, one of two that are coming in out west that will be bringing in cold air and some mountain snows as well. And many folks welcomed in the new year with snow and a whole lot of work. Dan Feldman of Litchfield, Nebraska is sharing this on Twitter, saying his neighbors showed up with a payloader and tractor to help him grab hay and dig him out for 7 miles so he could get to his livestock. I'll have more on your forecast coming up in just a little while.
Other aspects of American ag could see a benefit from a trade deal with China. We look at one of them coming up in today's analysis. And later, fighting prostate cancer before it even starts. A look at new technology being put in place across the country coming up. Wholesale and farm-level milk and dairy product prices are continuing to be their highest since 2015. That's according to a study by Dairy Management Incorporated. DMI has the details in its December dairy market report. It says stockpiles are down and use is up. Meanwhile, exports of certain key dairy products are beginning to show increases over year earlier levels. Non-fat dry milk and skim milk powder during August through October rose above the year prior. However, the report says U.S. dairy exports have been static following last year's strong performance, but export prices remain stronger. Corn futures are inching back towards 7-week highs, and soybeans touch their highest level in almost 10 weeks. How long can this rally last? We get an update on how the first day of trading went in the new year from the CME.
There's a lot going on here in the first session of the new year. Corn off to a pretty darn good spot. Well, we've been talking about that 390 area for the past couple weeks being a significant point. There's been a lot of interaction between the bulls and the bears over the last couple of weeks here. This represented a breakout point in September, as well as support in October, both of those on the back of U.S.D.A. reports. So if we are able to get some good fundamental news behind us and see consecutive closes above 390, I think that would encourage some short covering from the funds. On the soybean side of things, they've had a heck of a run here over the last month, about 75 cents. And I think they're starting to run out of a little bit of a juice. Sure, they could run a little bit higher, but there's a lot of resistance up at 970. This was a double top high from October. On top of that, you have the market in overbought conditions, the most overbought since we had that double top. So I would be a little bit cautious up here. If we were to get an additional run towards 970, I think you could look at that as an opportunity to look to the short side with a tight leash. And if you're a producer looking to hedge some crop, I think that would be a good spot to look at as well. Some of the technical levels we're looking at for that February live cattle contract, I mean, basically we've been sideways, range bound. 124 at the bottom end of that recent range. If we break and close below there, I wouldn't be surprised to see that lead to some additional accelerated selling pressure from the funds who are net long about 86,000 contracts. On the top side, 127 to 126 is really what we're looking at. Cash has been extremely strong here over the past couple of weeks and really over the past couple of months. If we start to see that die out or subside, I think you could see some additional pressure in those deferred months. This has been Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
It's not just soybeans, but livestock that could benefit from the new trade deal with China. Clinton Griffiths dove into that topic with Ted Seifert.
We're joined by Ted Seifert, Zaner Ag Hedge, our guest in studio today. Ted, let's talk about the potential of this trade deal with China. And we've discussed what it could mean for soybeans, but what about livestock? There's real potential there.
Yes, there really is. We know about the hog situation. We know that China has ASF and they need a lot of pork, right? The problem that we've had in 2019 is that a lot of our pork supplies have ractopamine. China won't accept that. But a lot of the majors, all the majors really have moved to non-ractopamine. So that really opens up our potential market to China, and that could be really good. It just may not be right away. It might be something that develops over the course of 2020. And honestly, I think there's a lot of reason for optimism for pork exports this year. But beef is the more interesting one.
Right?
Really is. That's not been a staple of the Chinese culture. However, it is growing. And I do believe that there is a lot of opportunity for us to grow our exports to China in the beef front. And that might be the biggest gain that we have of really any of the agricultural products that we'd be able to sell China. So it's something that we don't really know how to gauge yet. We know that it's a positive thing or a potential for a positive thing. So we've seen a nice little rally. We've been in a nice little rally in cattle. But that's something where cattle could get really strong. So keep an eye out for that. I'm really optimistic that China does want more of our beef than what we're currently expecting.
You know, we've talked for years about trying to open the door and trying to get into China with U.S. beef, and it seemed like we did make some progress ahead of this whole trade war that we've been in with China. Maybe this is the time. Maybe this is the opportunity.
Hopefully that can resume, right? Yeah. And in the meantime, we have good box beef prices. They've cooled down a little bit. Yeah. Cash prices are holding in fairly steady. Packers margins are really good. I still think there's more room to the upside. And the funds, you know, the speculative crowd have really taken to that live cattle chart. They like the look of it. They're going to continue to buy it. They've been buying dips. So I still think there's more upside potential for cattle. And then if China comes in and starts buying aggressively, then wow, things can get really interesting.
All right, I like interesting. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ted. We'll be back with more AgDay coming up in just a minute.
For professional marketing advice specifically tailored to your needs, call Zaner Ag Hedge at 312-277-0113. To help achieve your personal best yield, try Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans.
Just look at this, wildfires raging in the eastern Australian state of Victoria. Thousands of tourists are leaving the area. Cooler weather since Tuesday has aided crews in fighting the flames. But fire conditions are expected to worsen as high temperatures and strong winds return this weekend. The early start to Australia's summer wildfires has led authorities to rate this season the worst on record. Well, you take a look at our map, though, and we're nothing like that.
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, a lot of the growing parts of our country are still on the wet side. But you can see in the southwest, desert southwest, Four Corner region, that's the driest area on the drought monitor, but there are some dry areas in Texas and the Pacific Northwest as well. And things on the drought monitor really haven't changed a whole lot over the past 4 weeks. We go back 4 weeks, you can see a little bit drier off in the western states, but as we've moved through the last 4 weeks or so, you can still see the splotches of dryness, parts of Texas, Four Corner region, like I said. It's improved a little bit in the southeast, and it hasn't changed too much at all in the Pacific Northwest. All right, going forward though, we do have some moisture in the east. Lots of rain from Louisiana all the way up into the southern Great Lakes. We're seeing some snow in the northern Rockies with the warm front there. The main storm system going to come in, as you can see, well offshore so far. But as we head through the end of the day today, it'll be approaching the western coasts of Washington and Oregon. Rain continues east of this frontal system, a little batch of snow moving through the upper Midwest. This won't put down more than 1 to 3 inches in most areas. That will continue to move east as we head into the weekend and heading through the day tomorrow. You can see how that kind of combines with the system along the east coast. So there will be some snow in the eastern Great Lakes, central Appalachians as we head through the end of the day Saturday. Another system lurking offshore to the Pacific Northwest. Precipitation estimates over the past 24 hours. See some decent amounts already in the southern Mississippi Valley, Tennessee valleys. Adding in the next 36 hours, we'll just continue to add things a little farther east and toward the north. And you can see a fair amount in the Pacific Northwest as well, especially northwestern Washington in those areas. Snowfall amounts, well, the higher elevations in Washington, even almost to the coast, going to see some snow. You can see as we head through the next 36 hours in, that strip of snow across the upper Midwest, lower Great Lakes into the northeast continues to move through those areas. Temperatures this afternoon, not all that bad for this time of the year. 20s and 30s far north, 50s and 60s by the time you get to the Gulf Coast. A lot warmer in Florida, though. You can see a low in Miami tomorrow morning, only 75 degrees. And then you can see during the day tomorrow, still no Arctic air, but it's lurking to the north, getting a little bit closer. And as a matter of fact, when you look at the jet stream, you can see that storm system, that weak wind moving through, another little batch of colder air. And then this is a quick shot of slightly colder air, not quite Arctic air there, into the Great Lakes for the middle of next week. Going on beyond that, then, you can see that we kind of flatten things out again, so the cold air doesn't come and stay. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Heading to Boise, Idaho, first of all, mixture of clouds and sunshine, high of 48 degrees. Springfield, Missouri, cooler with a bit of rain, high of 44. And finally, Trenton, New Jersey, cloudy skies. The rain will be tapering off, though. High temperature around 51.
Still ahead, we continue our look back at 2019, a year not many people in the farming community will soon forget. We check in on Louisiana to see what producers there are looking forward to in 2020 next. '19 was a challenging year for Louisiana agriculture. Unfavorable weather conditions, reduced crop yields, and the trade war between the U.S. and China hurt prices. LSU Ag Center correspondent Craig Gautreaux has a look at the positives as we move into 2020.
Louisiana agriculture got off to a slow start in 2019 and never really recovered. Most row crops saw reduced yields, and a trade war with China caused exports to slump.
The global flow of U.S. ag products into China, particularly soybeans and cotton, were nowhere near the levels that we saw in 2018 and 2017.
Wet weather kept many acres from being planted in Louisiana and across the country. The Mississippi River was above flood stage for nearly 9 months, and seepage water kept some prime land out of production.
The wet weather, the unprecedented rains that we had this year in the U.S. really wreaked havoc with corn and soybean plantings, and to many market observers, 20 million acres not being able to get planted.
Less acreage in production would usually lead to higher prices, but large carryover stocks kept the lid on prices. Progress in trade talks between China and the U.S. has helped some commodity prices recently.
Positive news, that optimism that a Phase 1 agreement was finally reached between the two nations. It did spark interest in the cotton market and the soybean market.
After 2 consecutive record crops, Louisiana sugarcane saw a smaller harvest this year, mainly because of unfavorable weather.
Production's down this year. We have a lighter crop that was affected by freezing temperatures early on, early freezes, but also the effect of last harvest. It was a wet harvest, the rutting, the stubbling ability of the crop. It was going to be a light crop with less sugar that we had.
Perhaps the crop that suffered most was rice.
Production was down about 12%. Yields were down almost 500 pounds an acre.
Many producers are glad to see 2019 end and are hoping for better weather and prices for 2020. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
Pancreatic cancer is one of the most deadly forms of cancer, largely because of late diagnosis. But a new high-tech procedure can help identify and eliminate pancreatic cancer before it even develops. Details coming up. Georgia Democratic Representative John Lewis, an icon of the civil rights movement, has announced he will undergo treatment for stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The 79-year-old saying in a statement, quote, "I have been in some kind of fight for freedom, equality, basic human rights for nearly my entire life. I have never faced a fight quite like the one I have now," end quote. Because the symptoms are subtle and easy to miss, pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest forms of cancer. But a new high-tech procedure is helping to change that by identifying pancreatic cancer before it can even develop. Barb Consiglio with the Ohio State University U.S.D.A. Medical Center reports.
When Patricia Beatty was admitted to the hospital with a stomach virus, she didn't expect they'd find a problem in her pancreas.
He told me that that the cyst was there and that it was precancerous.
Patty was lucky. Pancreatic cancer is not usually caught so early.
The cancer doesn't produce any symptoms early on.
And while pancreatic cysts are common, it's difficult to determine which will become cancer. Doctors currently rely on testing fluid from inside the cyst.
The accuracy of that was poor, in a sense that about 30 to 35% of patients would remain undiagnosed.
So Dr. Somashekar Krishna, a gastroenterologist at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, led a study examining a new diagnostic method that allows doctors to do a sort of virtual biopsy, giving them a microscopic view of the cyst wall to make a diagnosis with complete confidence.
We can diagnose cysts with the accuracy of 96 to 97%.
The procedure uses a tiny scope that emits laser light to produce a cellular image of the inside of the cyst.
Looking at the wall, the image pattern which comes from the cyst wall, which comes as a direct video feed in real time, we can conclude what the diagnosis is.
For Patty, this means eliminating the cyst and living a cancer-free future with her family.
It just makes me feel really, really good that I'm going to be here.
At the Ohio State Wexner Medical Center, this is Barb Consiglio reporting.
Researchers are now training doctors and hospitals across the country to perform this new procedure and to analyze the images it produces to accurately diagnose precancerous cysts. And again, we thank the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center for that report. Well, that's all the time we have this morning. We're glad you tuned in. For all of us here at AgDay, I'm Betsy Gibbon. Have a great day.